KPBS On Demand is supported by UC San Diego's Art Power, presenting cellist Joshua Roman, performing from his album Immunity, alongside music by J.S. Bach and more. Sunday, June 22nd at UC San Diego's Epstein Family Amphitheater. Reserve your tickets at artpower.ucsd.edu.
Hi, I'm Beth Accomando, your resident cinema junkie here at KPBS. From the archives this week, I decided to pull up an interview with Nicholas Hoult. Hoult can currently be seen in Mad Max Fury Road playing one of the War Boys, Nux. He was also seen in Warm Bodies, and he also plays Beast in the X-Men movies. I interviewed Hoult for a film called Wawa, directed and written by actor Richard E. Grant. Grant had written this screenplay based on his own childhood growing up in Swaziland. He cast Hoult to play his alter ego in the film. Audiences have been watching Hoult grow up on screen, starting with About a Boy and running through Mad Max Fury Road. And the fact that Hoult has become more popular on screen may make people want to go back and look at some of his earlier work. Wawa reveals that actor Richard E. Grant is as adept behind the camera as he is in front, and the film stars Gabriel Byrne, Emily Watson, Julie Walters, and Miranda Richardson. Before I dust off that interview from the archives, let's play the trailer from Wawa so you can get a sense of what the film's about.
This 10th day of June, 1969, in the 18th year of our reign.
In the remote nation of Swaziland, a group of British expatriates lived the charmed life.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers, Gwen. This is not too stiff for you, is it?
They had their customs.
Harry said I'd be bored stiff, but I love it.
How very hobble-jobble for you.
Hobble-jobble.
Their traditions.
Why do they all speak in this snooty baby talk all the time?
And each other.
Ah, the welcoming committee!
But while their perfect world was coming to an end, one family's problems were just beginning.
You knew Mum was coming down to see me, so why didn't you tell me?
It's just weird that every time my mother makes any kind of contact, he goes ballistic.
Wasn't that long ago you were begging me to stay?
I can't deal with this.
We all lie. Everyone's jumping everyone round here, but just because they're not divorced, we pretend it's not happening.
Just because you married my husband faster than a sandwich doesn't give you rights.
Like we pretend Dad's not a total drunk.
I'm not invisible, you know.
No, you're a divorcee, which is far worse.
No more la-di-da, hoity-toity, hooty, snooty, wah-wah anymore.
I suppose you think this is all so bloody easy.
You never really get away, you know.
Gabriel Byrne, Miranda Richardson, Emily Watson, Julie Walters, and About a Boy's Nicholas Hoult. From director Richard E. Grant, Wawa.
What is it like to play a person who's actually the person directing you as well?
It's quite a strange experience because normally all the directors that I've worked with are basically have just got the script and it's not anything to really do with them. So when you're playing a character who the person that you're playing it was set on their life, they'd written it and they were directing it, it was quite scary for me because, I could let him down tremendously because, I could just not create the great character that he's written or just not portray the emotions well enough, and he obviously knew exactly how it was, so he would be able to see if it wasn't correct how I was doing it, very obviously. So it's a bit scary, but once I got out there and got into the character and realised what a great director Richard was and how he puts you at ease and he's very clear with what he wants and, it just made it very easy for me to play him. Then he didn't necessarily want to create a character of himself, a younger version of himself or whatever. He just wanted to create the character of Ralph, who it all happens to. So it wasn't too terrifying once I realised that he didn't, necessarily want a perfect image of himself portrayed. It was more about the story and what was going on to the character and all the other characters and the handover to the independence of Swaziland.
So you didn't feel intimidated as much as you felt like you had the live source right there to turn to?
Yeah, it was useful, it was kind of scary at first just because I didn't want to let him down really, because I know how much hard work he put into it and how much he adored the film. So I didn't want to let him down, and that was worrying at first, but then, once we got into playing the character and just got settled out there in Africa, none of that really worried me much anymore, and he's a very complimentary director and just really easy to work with and a really nice guy who he's got loads of energy constantly, and he just did anything to get the film made really, and he was just a brilliant director to have around and a great guy to have on set, so it was all good.
Now, did he take you aside and tell you anything that maybe wasn't in the script that he thought would help you get that character right?
There wasn't anything in particular. He kind of he didn't try and make me act like him, if you see what I mean. The film was based on his life and everything, but the character wasn't exactly him, although everything that happened was true and everything. So he wasn't trying to necessarily get me to play him. I mean, he made me a CD of the music that my character would have listened to, and that was probably the hardest thing to get into, was the era and the style of life that people had in colonial Swaziland, which is a lot different from what we live in today, basically.
Was this the first time you'd ever gone to Africa?
It wasn't, no. I'd been to Nairobi before, but that was when I was probably 6 or something. So this was the first time I'd really got to go and manage to appreciate it properly, because when you're younger, you don't really, it's just kind of like a holiday. So it was amazing to go out there. It's such a beautiful country, and it's just a joy to be there for 7 weeks filming. I mean, I think the film does do justice to how beautiful the country is, and all the locals were really, really nice, and it was just a really fun shoot. And because everybody was out there, we all kind of bonded and became like a giant family, basically.
And how did you kind of get a feel for what that time period was like, and what it would have been like to be British in Swaziland at that time, just before the country was getting its independence?
Yeah, well, obviously, when you read the script, you get quite a good sense of how it was like, because, the women didn't really work, so they were bored, and they had nothing to do out there, really, so they were off having affairs, and it was quite boring for most of the people who lived out there, basically. So, they all turned to having affairs, and my character smokes pot and stuff, and you kind of get into the era, this weird thing, when I put on a costume or something, and when you see all the other people in their other costumes, and you see the sets as they would be in that era and stuff, you kind of just go into that mind frame, and it just becomes kind of life for you, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Did Richard comment at all about how the country had changed from when he was there? Was there any, real perceivable difference to him, or was there any feedback that you were getting from the people you were working with that were from the country?
I don't think it had changed drastically that much. I mean, quite a few of the sets, I think, were actually where the events had actually taken place. Quite a few of the people in the film were around when he was growing up there, like the teacher in the class scene was his actual teacher when he was there.
Good morning, class.
Good morning, Mr. Parker.
Now stand up. Yes, you too. Read it out loud and clear. Chop, chop, Compton. We're all waiting. Well, speak up. We haven't got all day.
It was kind of based very much around his childhood, and I think it was very true to how it was. And I don't think the country had changed that much, because obviously it's not a very economically developed country, so it's not like other countries that's going to sprout up tower blocks all the time and change very quickly. So I think it was quite similar to how it was, which obviously for the sets and everything made it a lot easier to make it look like it was still 1970s.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about working with Gabriel Byrne and how that was, and what kind of an acting relationship you developed with him?
Gabriel was a brilliant actor to work with. He was a really, really nice guy. I don't know, he was kind of a brother figure whilst I was out there. I just got on really well with him, and I don't know, I learned a lot from him from just watching him and how he conducted himself. And whenever we were sitting around on set and had nothing to do, he'd always have lots of great stories to tell from all the times he'd been acting throughout his career and all the people he'd met. And he's just a genuinely nice guy with a lot of time for everybody. And, a brilliant actor to work with. When you work with great actors like that, just watching them sometimes when you're acting a scene, you think, wow, that is incredible.
I suppose you think this is all so bloody easy. Well, wake up. Just you wait until you lose everything. And I mean everything. Wife, position, future, the whole damn kit and caboodle. Come independence, we're all on the scrap heap. So wake up.
Spare us the martyrdom, Dad. You're drunk.
Although, obviously, you concentrated on your acting or whatever, or being your character, but it's quite impressive. And then, we just got on really well. And at the end of filming, there's a part of the film where Richard wears 2 watches, one from his wife and one that his father gave him. And there's a part in the film where Gabriel hands me over his watch being as he's playing Richard. And after filming finished, Gabriel gave me a watch as a present for the end of filming, which he got engraved saying "Wah Wah, with love from Gabriel," and he gave me a watch, which was really, really nice. I mean, it's just one of the nicest people you'll ever meet, really.
Now, the character he plays isn't one of the. I mean, he's a person who has a problem with alcohol. So, how difficult was it to do those confrontational scenes with him?
It wasn't difficult at all, obviously, because he played it so well, and he was truly terrifying. Basically, when he started to scream and shout and throw the bottles and stuff, it wasn't difficult for me to act terrified or whatever, because I was actually terrified of him, even though he was the nicest bloke ever normally. I mean, when you see him doing that, and he just completely switches, obviously, and becomes his character. So when you see him doing that, it wasn't difficult for me, because I was actually terrified. And that's the great thing about working with these brilliant actors, is that it makes life a lot easier for you, because they're so good that they make it easier for you to act alongside them and just believe what's going on, really.
Mm-hmm. Now, what kind of a director is Richard E. Grant? I mean, he's someone who's been an actor, so do you think he works better with actors because of that background?
He can be quite hands-on or quite hands-off, depending. I mean, he'd let you try your own things, and if he thinks the scene's okay, he wouldn't direct just for the sake of directing and change things when it wasn't necessary to change them. So he would, let you put your own input in and just let you play around with it. But then, obviously, because he'd experienced it and because he had been an actor before, for me, he made things very clear, and it was just easy to understand what he wanted, because, some directors, they are kind of quite vague with what they want. Obviously, he knew exactly what he wanted, which made my life quite a lot easier, and he could explain it very well from an actor's point of view as well, which was, really useful, and I think it was the better for it.
I was just curious if he's the kind of director who tends to try to verbalize what he wants, or does he, kind of get up and say, this is how I want you to do it, and act it out himself?
Yeah, he'd do a mix of all those really things, basically. He'd, physically he'd stand up and, if it was a movement that you weren't doing right, he'd show you how to do the movement, or sometimes he wouldn't almost verbalize the emotions. He'd just kind of make random noises like grrring and stuff, and just clench his fists and stuff, and show you the emotions that you're meant to be feeling from doing that sort of thing, which is, it's a bit weird at first, but you get used to it, and I think it's a really good way of directing, basically, and it worked well for me.
Did you have a particular scene that was either a favorite scene or a scene that you found particularly satisfying from an acting perspective to accomplish?
I think probably the scene where Gabriel holds the gun to me. That was obviously, I'd never had a gun held to me before, so it was quite a difficult scene for me to do, because I hadn't had anything really to base it on in real life.
Stay where you are! Fucking fairy! Not so bloody smart now, are you?
Come on, do it.
Shoot!
Once we got that in the can, and once we had played around with it and rehearsed it and got it feeling right, I think that was a really good scene to film, and I think that came across quite well. So that was obviously good fun. And also from a scene that I quite enjoyed doing was the scene at the cinema ticket office, flirting with Mrs. Malaga.
Evening, Mrs. Malaga. Has anyone ever told you who you're the spitting image of?
No, love, who?
Elizabeth Taylor, Scout's Honour. Look, I know it's an 18, but we're studying the book at school and wondered if you could make an academic exception. Just this once. Liz?
These are on the house, love. But not a word to anyone.
Thanks. Just because, it was quite a fun scene to film where it wasn't too heavy-handed. I could kind of mess around a bit and try and be more, cheeky with the character, basically, and show that side to him, which was good fun.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk a little bit about it? Within the film, your character takes on a role in the play Camelot that these Britishers are going to be performing. as like part of this ceremony for the independence. Could you just comment a little bit about kind of the choice of that and what it reflects on those British characters?
What it is obviously Princess Margaret is visiting, and all the Swansea people put on tribal dancing and stuff, and the British folk, which sums them up quite well, decide to put on a production of Camelot, which is basically nothing to do with Swazi independence or anything. And they decide to put that on, and they actually have a coloured man playing Lancelot, who they, it's quite politically incorrect because in the time to not offend Princess Margaret or whatever, because they weren't really allowed to perform, they paint him white.
C'est moi, I'm forced to admit, 'tis I humbly reply, that mortal who these marvels can do, c'est moi, 'tis I.
And have him with the helmet on, and it just sums up the general opinions and society and how society was, with the hierarchy and how people weren't allowed to perform, and just what they thought was a good idea of putting on Camelot as a independence ceremony performance, basically, which obviously it wasn't the best of ideas, probably. And it all goes, it doesn't go horrifically wrong, but obviously Guinevere, Julie Walters, who plays Guinevere, gets horrendously drunk, and, it's kind of amateur production of it, which Tobias, the director, takes very seriously and thinks he's a brilliant director, and it's just quite funny to watch, really, this amateur production who are taking it very seriously, almost.
Mm-hmm. Well, it also seemed there was an odd mix in the choice of the play. I mean, on the one hand, it kind of revealed a kind of blindness that they had as to, what they were choosing to perform. But on the other hand, there's kind of a certain naivete that has a certain appeal to it, too.
Yeah, it's kind of a mix of that where you can laugh at it and just see how ridiculous it almost is, and it's good fun to watch it and just see all the shenanigans going on, basically, and see the characters taking themselves quite seriously in their amateur dramatics.
How difficult was it to go there and shoot in Swaziland? Were they very accommodating, or was it difficult to go there to shoot?
For the first week I was there, I found it quite strange, being in the middle of nowhere and not having all the home comforts that you're used to. That was quite weird. But then once you settle into the lifestyle and kind of forget about all the things that you don't really probably need at home, you just kind of get engrossed in it, and it's delightful to live there. I mean, it's such a beautiful place, and all the locals were just delightful. I mean, it was the first film ever made in Swaziland, so they were quite curious and all very friendly. On the last day filming in Tiggs Peak, the locals came in and sang to us whilst we were eating lunch, and they sang Siyabonga Wawa, which means thank you Wawa. And, it's just a completely different experience. It's life-changing, basically, because you wouldn't really get that anywhere else that you go in the world, and it was just very touching to be out there and be a part of it, and see how all these people live and just see other cultures, basically.
When you go there, I mean, is it obvious that it had been a country that had been associated with Britain before? Is there remnants of any of this kind of, British culture, or is it completely erased from there, or how?
I wouldn't say it was particularly erased. I mean, obviously, the Brits installed when they were there, everybody's got clean running water and all things like that. And, some of the buildings you could probably see as being colonial buildings built by the British, but, you wouldn't walk into it and think, wow, this was definitely inhabited by the Brits. I mean, just a few little things like the running water and stuff, which they'd inserted probably, that might give it away. But apart from that, there's nothing really to tell it apart, I wouldn't say, no.
Mm-hmm. Can you describe the title, where that comes from in the film?
Yeah, it's Wawa, which is basically the colonial speech was kind of very, I don't know how to describe it, but they used funny slang almost, which was like toodle pip and cheerio and chin chin and all these sort of random things which people obviously wouldn't say. And then Ruby's character, who's an American, who marries Gabriel Byrne's character, she's played by Emily Watson. She marries him whilst I'm off at boarding school, and I come home to meet her, and she picks up on all this hush hush and bibbidi bop language that they speak. And she comes up with the word Wawa, which is basically the interpretation of how the British colonials spoke with all their uppity, stuck-up English talk, basically. It's her interpretation of it, saying it's all Wawa. and it's all gobbledygook, basically.
Toodle-pipple. Toodle-pipple, Charles.
Toodle-pip. Toodle-pip. Toodle-pip and hush-hush. Why do they all speak in this snooty baby talk all the time? Blah, blah, this, ta-da, that, hubbly-jubbly, hoity-toity, toodaloo, ding-dong. Sounds like a load of old wah-wah. Wah-wah, 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 wah.
So was the entrance of the American character, I mean, did Richard tell you anything about it? I mean, did that really kind of cause that kind of a turmoil? I mean, was it that much of a kind of shock to the to the culture there to have someone like that who tended to speak her mind a little more plainly, or?
Yeah, obviously, the culture there is very different from what she'd been used to, and obviously this character had been to college and been an air hostess and all these sort of things, which these colonials would probably look down on, working and things like that, and it's not from their culture and it's not what they would do, so it was looked down on them. But obviously she's actually a Richard character who can deal with the dysfunctional family that she marries into, and she, at first the society doesn't really accept her, but I think towards the end they kind of understand her and gets accepted, sort of thing. There
were a lot of really amazing actresses in this film too. What kind of working relationships did you establish with them?
Emily Watson, Julie Walters, Miranda Richardson, they were all just delightful, and because you're out there for so long with all of them, it did become like a family. And I honestly think I just got on really well with everybody. It was just lovely to go to work every day knowing that you're going to be with these great people, and that there wouldn't be any diva drops or anything, and that everybody would get along and do their jobs well. And I'd done a film before with Julie Walters when I think it was 5. I played her grandson, and then suddenly I was 14. She was playing my auntie and stuff, and it's just nice to be with people who are really down to earth and just brilliant actresses who don't necessarily take themselves too seriously with themselves, and just really nice, genuine people who you can get along with when you're working and off the set, and just enjoy being with, basically.
And do they all tend to have similar approaches to the way they act, or are they all very different in terms of kind of how they approach a character or a scene?
I can't really describe the different approaches. Obviously, they're playing very different characters. Miranda Richardson's character is very cold and reserved, so that's very difficult different to Emily Watson's character, who's very warm and friendly, and then there's Julie Walters' character, who's a bit of a drunk and kind of the Joker almost. So it's such different characters that obviously people's approaches to them will be different, because the mindset that you've got to be in to play them has got to be quite a lot different, because just being ice cold to being very friendly and warm is quite a transition. So obviously the mindset that you're in when you're playing them has got to be quite different.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I found interesting was that a lot of times when you see a film that's autobiographical and the person it's about is either the writer or the director, you really tend to sense that character might be glossed over a little bit, or somehow stands separate from the other characters. But I was really impressed how it didn't seem like Richard E. Grant was trying to make himself seem better than anyone else, or the character seemed very real and flawed.
It is his story, obviously, and it's about his character growing up, but it's an ensemble cast, and all the things that happen to him just create the character, and he's not perfect. It's not everybody else's fault the whole time. He can't handle things. He runs away, and he's the one that gets annoyed and gets upset, and it's him trying to deal with it itself, and obviously growing up and becoming a man, and it's a changing of age, growing up basically as well. Story of him trying to grow up in this dysfunctional family in Swaziland, and he's not perfect, but none of the characters really are when you look at them. So not many people in the world are really perfect anyway. So it's just an interesting story, because obviously he hasn't made himself perfect just to make himself blossom in the film, and everybody think that he's a saint or whatever. So it's interesting to see.
What are you most proud of in the film?
What am I most proud of? That's quite a difficult question. I'm just proud to be a part of it overall, because when I see it, I don't generally like watching myself, but I enjoy watching it and seeing other people's performances. I'm just proud to be a part of the film overall and be a part of, Richard worked so hard to get the film made and everything. I'm just proud to be a part of his story and putting it together, really. That was privilege enough for me.
And what do you think audiences will come away from the film thinking about?
One of the main themes is the family life, which goes on, the drunken father and, the mum's running away and getting remarried and stuff. And I'm not sure. I think, hopefully people, when they see the film, there's funny bits and they'll enjoy those, and hopefully not that I want to upset people, but hopefully they'll, feel the pain that the characters go through, and then, it's an emotional roller coaster, hopefully, where they get the ups and the downs, and then they leave just, seeing. I'm not sure. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I don't know. I don't think there's any major moral issue being shown through it, but I don't think a film really needs some big moral message for you to enjoy it. I think, just enjoy it for the decent film it is.
And what appealed to you the most about the character you played?
Just the fact that, all these, crazy things happen in his life, basically, and it's just a difficult life for him to live anyway, and then at the same time he's trying to grow up and become a young man, so he's going through all this, and obviously the fact that he can't always cope with it, it's just interesting to see how he deals with it and how that his life was, because most people don't have lives like that, and I mean, I don't, so it's just interesting to read about a young man's life like that and get the chance to pretend to be him and play him. So the whole thing just interested me, really. The lifestyle, the culture, the era, and just everything about the character was just something really gripping to get into, and I felt as though it was something that I could immerse myself in for the 7-week shoot without getting bored of him, really, which, he's a very layered character who I don't think you really fully understand, probably.
And one last thing, I just wanted to ask you about the puppets that are used in the film. And how was that, working with those and kind of using that as a means for the character to express himself?
Some of the puppets were actually Richard's, and that's how he kind of got away from it all. I mean, people have their things when they have bad times at home and stuff. They have their thing which they immerse themselves in, maybe playing sport and stuff. And the thing he immersed himself in was his puppets and his acting and stuff. And, obviously his father called him a dolly boy and whatever for it, and took the mick out of him. But that was one thing that, Richard managed to find an escape in, sort of thing. And I thought it was a good kind of, it was a good way of displaying that throughout the film, the scenes with the puppets and the lighting and how the puppets move and just the emotional thing, and you can kind of display a lot through the puppets of how the character was feeling, which was useful, kind of a way of doing it rather than using voiceover or something like that. And I think it worked really well.
So were some of those actually the puppets he had when he was the age he was in the film, or are they ones that, does he still continue to kind of create those?
No, there was, I think quite a few of them were actually his puppets from his collection, which he had kept from back in the era. And, obviously some of them were new and stuff, but quite a few of them were actually his own puppets, which he brought over to Swaziland.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. All right, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, bye.
Take care, bye.
You've been listening to the Cinema Junkie podcast. I'm Beth Accomando. Please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and make sure you give us a rating. Thanks very much for listening.
KPBS On Demand is supported by UC San Diego's Art Power, presenting cellist Joshua Roman, performing from his album Immunity, alongside music by J.S. Bach and more, Sunday, June 22nd at UC San Diego's Epstein Family Amphitheater. Reserve your tickets at artpower.ucsd.edu.